This is Indian Country Today.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahant. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. As the new Congress and new president took office, there was a lot of hope that bipartisanship would be the order of the day. But on the first major piece of legislation, a $1.9 trillion coronavirus pandemic relief bill, that's not the case. House Republicans are united in their opposition to the measure. I haven't seen a Republican yet that's found something in there that they could agree with, said House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He said, I think all Republicans believe in three simple things. They want a bill that puts us back to work, back to school, and back to health. This bill is too costly, too corrupt, and too liberal. On the other side of the aisle, Democrats showed no sign of backing down, saying the relief bill is important for people, businesses, and states and tribal governments. The bill includes $20 billion targeted to tribal governments, and another $8 billion will increase federal programs that spend money for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Indian Health Service, and other Indian programs. The Biden administration continues to make significant appointment of Native American leaders far beyond Deb Haaland and the Department of the Interior. The latest is former Nez Perce Tribal Council member Jamie Pinkham has been named as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, one of two positions in the U.S. Army that oversee the work of the Corps of Engineers. Pinkham has been the Executive Director of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission since 2013. The Army Corps of Engineers has a significant impact on river health nationwide, issuing federal clean water permits and managing 740 dams and more than 14,000 miles of levees. Among the more contentious projects the Corps is currently engaged in are the Pebble Mine in Alaska, the Yazoo Pumps in Mississippi, and its management of the 4 federal dams on the lower Snake River in eastern Washington that impact endangered salmon runs. Tom Kiernan, president of American Rivers, said this appointment is more important than ever because of climate issues. He said Pinkham has extensive experience with river management, tribal treaties, and fish and wildlife restoration. As the first Native American in this position, he begins an important new chapter for the agency. The Cherokee Nation is removing language from its tribal laws that directly impact 8,500 of its citizens. The Cherokee Nation Supreme Court ruled this week in a unanimous decision that the language "by blood" is void and should be removed from the Cherokee Nation's constitution and laws. The decision was made in response to a federal case in 2017, Cherokee Nation versus Nash, which determined Cherokee freedmen citizens have full rights as Cherokee citizens based on the Treaty of 1866. The nation's Attorney General, Sarah Hill, said provisions in Cherokee Nation's constitution and laws that deny descendants of freedmen all the rights and obligations of Cherokee citizenship violate our 155-year-old treaty obligations and are void. Cherokee citizens of freedmen descent are simply this: Cherokee citizens. The Cherokee Nation has about 8,500 enrolled Cherokee Nation citizens of freedmen descent. Carthage College in Wisconsin is the latest school to rebrand its athletics department due to a rising awareness of racial justice and cultural appropriation. The liberal arts college in Kenosha will now compete as the Firebirds. That's a vibrant creature featured in Russian and Slavic mythology. The decision comes after months of consideration by the Board of Trustees that looked for a new name to represent the small campus. In previous team names, Redmen and Lady Reds raised questions about the college's commitment to racial and gender equity, the college said in a press release. The latest change at Carthage applies to all 27 of the school's NCAA Division III teams and stems from a task force created in November 2019. The task force, which consisted of students, faculty, alumni, and other university representatives, was formed in response to widespread dissatisfaction with the previous names, particularly from female athletes. A painting created more than 17,000 years ago by Aboriginal artists is being identified with a little help from some ancient wasp nests. The BBC reports that rock art is more than 6 feet long and features a kangaroo. It's on the slope ceiling of a rock shelter in Western Australia's Kimberley region. It is Australia's oldest intact rock art. Wasp nests were found both underneath the rock art and on top of the art, giving researchers the ability to radiocarbon date the nest to determine the age. It was painted in an early naturalistic style, which often features life-size rendering of animals, according to researchers. The findings were published in the journal Nature Human Behavior. Scientists working with the local Aboriginal community, who can trace their heritage back to the region back tens of thousands of years. They're also looking at a link between rock art from people in other parts of the region, such as Indonesia and Southeast Asia. And those are the headlines from Indian Country today. I'm Mark Trahan. When we come back, we'll hear about a grassroots effort to help Navajo and Hopi elders.
This is Indian Country Today.
Early last year, when the long-term impact of COVID-19 was unknown, Ethel Branch started a fundraising campaign to help elders in remote areas of the Navajo and Hopi reservations. Microsoft founder Bill Gates called Branch one of the 7 unsung heroes for leadership during the COVID crisis. She started the Navajo-Hopi's Family COVID-19 Relief Fund. She is Navajo and a graduate of Harvard Law School. I asked her why she started this fund.
Right before I went and did my personal shopping to prepare to essentially isolate for 2 weeks, seeing the rise in cases in Arizona. And when I did my personal shopping, literally there were shelves that were barren. And I was also shopping for my mom, and she doesn't have running water or electricity. So some of the non-perishable items she needed just weren't on the shelves. And then the next day did an exploratory post on Facebook. It was like, would anybody be interested in helping contribute to, a fund where we would buy the stuff people need in Flagstaff and people could pick up here instead of going to the grocery stores, or we would get the stuff out to them. And I got a real positive response from all over the country. And so went ahead and formed a GoFundMe site. And by the end of the day, we'd raised $5,000. And by the 4th day, we'd raised over $100,000.
Why did you extend the project to the Hopi tribe?
There was a lot of excitement within our group about having it be a joint Navajo and Hopi effort because people are so tired of the division between the two tribes. And many of us were raised, with stories of cooperation. Like my mom taught me that, why Hopi is located in the center of Navajo is because we were their protectors. And our family had huge farms, and we would, bring our farm goods up to Hopi and mutton and do trading. And so there was this really beautiful reciprocal relationship. And many of the folks on my team have similar stories as well. And so we run these one-page ads in the Navajo Times and Navajo and Hopi Observer. They're in English and Navajo, and then we've also developed some Hopi curriculum. So we have those running right now in English, but we're having them translated into Hopi. And people seem to be responding really well to them. I mean, the characters are Navajo and Hopi. The context is our communities. And it's kind of a graphic novel style. So it appeals to older people as well as our kids. And as you know, kids are such a great source of enforcement with these sorts of things, because they're like, hey, you didn't wash your hands for 20 seconds. So yeah, that's really, really important to us, is making sure that people are changing their behavior. I think one of the most important lessons is just that lesson of empowerment. In Navajo teachings, there's a philosophy of Twa Ajit Ego, which is sort of, like self-determination, as well as, and, that's balanced by ke, that sense of kinship. And so what we've been able to do is really reawaken that in our communities. People realize that, like we're not a government, we're just people. And we step forward and we're able to make this huge difference in our community. And this is, prompted a bunch of other smaller groups that are really focused on their local community level. And we work in collaboration with them. But it's been really eye-opening for people to be like, hey, I don't have to just sit back and wait for the government to act, whether that's the Navajo Nation government or the Hopi tribe, or the federal government or the state government. And that's really going back to how things used to be in our communities. We didn't have a government to respond. It was, our clans and our families, our local communities. And so it's been really beautiful to see that reawakening, and sort of that message of hope for the future, not just in the face of COVID, but all of the many challenges that our communities face at the local level. So people now realize that, they can make a difference, and, they can step forward and tackle these challenges at the local level.
That was Ethel Branch, founder of the Navajo-Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. Vision Maker Media turns 45 this month. Joining us is the founding director, Frank Blythe, and his daughter, Francine Blythe. She became its third executive director this summer. ICT producer Shirley Sneevy led the organization for 15 years before Francine's appointment. Frank, where did Vision Maker Media start?
We started with one office in the basement of NET Television in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1978, 76. Got our first grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and we've been fortunate to have those grants come to us for 45 years and have kept that up. But it took a lot of work to keep them in the groove with us, and we just grew from there. We started out basically as a station membership organization. Public television stations were the impetus behind our initial organization. They got us together. At the time, there were about 6 Native Americans working in public television or public media, and they found us all, got us together at a meeting in Wingspread, Wisconsin, at the Wingspread Foundation, and set us in a room and said, "You guys come out with a plan." Of course, we didn't know what the heck we were doing, but we had some good people there that got together and put our heads together, and we spent all afternoon hammering out at least the beginnings of a plan to involve the stations supporting us as well as other entities. And we got it out. We first called it Native American Public Broadcasting Consortium, which was a membership organization. The stations joined us as members to use our library, and we did that for about 20 years. But anyway, it grew from there, and it got us started at Nebraska ETV Network in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Francine, what's changed this year?
Because of COVID, we put our film festival that was in person in Lincoln, Nebraska every other year. We put it online last year, and it kind of blew the visibility of Native story and Vision Maker Media out of the water worldwide. We received more than 164,000 streams to watch our film festival. We had subscriptions increase up to 15,000 more, and feedback was just people really had no idea that Native Americans were so abundant, successful, and struggling, but yet also thriving within our cultures and our communities on all kinds of social topics. And so this year we're continuing with online programming around Women's History Month, around environment, around Indigenous Day, of course, Native American Heritage Month. We are going to expand and broaden our producer training to allow more people, if they were not funded by us, to also participate in the training, which we will also do online because of COVID. And then also we are beginning to invest more money in youth media and then short fictional platforms for PBS, who is right now working and discovering and experimenting with more digital narrative platforms, and then also continue with our public media long and short form documentary for broadcasting.
That's a far cry from where we started from, Mark. We started just making films. Film was the medium at the time. Then it went to videotape, and stayed with videotape up until the mid-90s. And then it started turning into the digital media aspect of it, which is about the time I retired, and it kind of left me behind after that. But those are the fun days, though, working with filmmakers and talking to them about all their films and how they're doing it and how they're working it. The biggest challenge for them was always raising money to do their films. We awarded small startup grants to get them started, research, production, and finishing grants, but they had to raise the rest of the money for whatever their budget was. But those are the fun days, though, because you work more closely with them now than you do online with the producers.
Frank and Francine Blythe, celebrating 45 years of Vision Maker Media. When we come back, we'll take a deeper look at a pipeline controversy. How is Line 3 impacting Native communities? There's the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Keystone XL Pipeline and thousands of other pipelines crisscrossing North America. One that's particularly important is Line 3. Enbridge is building the 334-mile-long oil pipeline across northern Minnesota. Called Line 3, it will carry 760,000 barrels of oil per day, including tar sands from Alberta, Canada to Superior, Wisconsin. It's a messy, deeply human affair, and ICT's Marionette Pember takes us to the front lines.
It's minus 11 degrees in Palisade, Minnesota, but water protectors are hard at work putting together an educational event / winter festival to call attention to the negative impacts of Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline. The city of Palisade and Aiken County refused to allow them to hold their event in the area's public park, so they simply moved it to a friend's private property. Denying water protectors use of public space is emblematic of Enbridge's powerful economic hold over the region, effectively robbing them of their constitutional rights to free speech, according to Shanae Matson. Born and raised in Palisade, Matson is currently living at the Honor the Earth's Water Protector Camp, where she and others are working to oppose Line 3 and educate the public about the pipeline's long-term negative impacts on the environment and economy.
There's a way that it feels like it's putting me in conflict with people that I care about and people in my community, because I know how they feel and they know how I feel. And it seems sometimes like there isn't common ground anymore, because it's, you know, the pipeline is ripping through the community, and a lot of people here believe that it's like they've said, it's a done deal, it's inevitable. Why are we bothering to protest? Are we just causing problems? And that's is such an important part of this work. And we really want people to understand that we're not just protesters. You know, we're actually water protectors.
Matson was shocked when she was denied a permit to use the park. She reached out to Aiken County Sheriff Dan Gaida, who was copied on emails regarding the denial.
Kind of upset, you know, he responded to me in email and he said, you've been involved in unlawful assemblies. They have every right to use that against you, but they're not. And so, you know, he said in this email that he believes that the city and probably the county have the right to use against me my participation in what he quoted as unlawful assemblies. I've never been cited. I've never been arrested for unlawful assembly.
Enbridge has pumped large sums of money into local communities along the pipeline route through donations, jobs, tax revenues, and money for local policing. Pipeline opponents believe this money has bought goodwill and support for Enbridge from community leaders eager to keep their economies on the upswing. Matson and others reached out to the Center for Protest Law and Litigation in Washington, D.C. for help. The director, Mara Verheyden-Hilliard, wrote a letter to City of Palisade and Aiken County leaders accusing them of violating the water protectors' First Amendment rights by denying them access to the park and failing to provide legal justification or a clear appeal process for the decision. In the end, water protectors held their event on private land nearby and marched down to the Mississippi River in Berglund Park, where they offered prayers and songs. About 60 miles further east along the Line 3 route, Taisha Martineau of the Fond du Lac Band of Ojibwe is also experiencing pushback from family and tribal leaders for her work opposing Line 3. Although the Fond du Lac Band of Ojibwe originally opposed the project, they agreed to permit Enbridge to build the pipeline through the reservation. The Minnesota Public Utilities Commission green-lighted the project, so the tribe was faced with an impossible choice. Either they approved the original route or the company would reroute around the reservation through a more environmentally vulnerable area. In exchange for supporting the pipeline route through the reservation, Enbridge paid the tribe an undisclosed sum. Tribal leaders also agreed not to publicly oppose the project. Many tribal leaders, like Martineau, disagreed with the tribe's decision and are actively opposing it. Many tribal citizens, like Martineau, disagreed with the tribe's decision and are actively opposing it. In January, the single mother of four organized a GoFundMe campaign in which she raised $30,000 to purchase a plot of land immediately next door to an Enbridge construction site on the Fond du Lac Reservation. She and her fellow water protectors named the site Camp Migizi. They have locked themselves to construction equipment to stop or delay construction on the pipeline. At other times, they've stood by, quietly holding signs against the construction. Martineau was recently arrested for trespassing on an Enbridge construction site. Although water protectors were also present, she was the only one arrested. Martineau is concerned that tribal leadership may retaliate against her by banishing her or barring her from tribal housing.
We know that they had targeted me specifically because I am the landowner and I'm hosting all of these brave, amazing water protectors, and I'm from here. And so they see me as an Indigenous leader within the movement. I've been confronted directly, yeah. And, most of my relatives who confront me, they're scared. They're afraid for my children. They're afraid for my ability to have a house over my head. It's fear that has them yelling at me.
Even though she is breastfeeding her youngest son, she won't let that deter her from actions opposing the pipeline.
And we've got a deep freezer full of milk, just in case Mom ever takes a trip down to the jail. And then I've got a portable breast pump that I take with me everywhere. And that way, if I'm ever arrested off the line, more often than not, the confrontations are from elders or community members who will pass me tobacco in secret and thank me for the work that I'm doing. And it's really, that respect there and that community support that helps keep us going. Because there is a lot of people who don't want to see us do the work that we do, but it's those ones who do that keep us going.
In Palisade, Minnesota, Marionette Pember, Indian Country Today.
Thank you, Marionette Pember, for that report. Earlier this week, Google celebrated Zitkala Sa's birthday on its welcoming page. Rosebud Sioux artist Yvonne Russo brings a PBS animation about her life.
Words are so deep in my heart, I cannot utter them without tears. I have tried as an interpreter to make America, which is so generous to all other races of the world, to understand my own people, the first Americans of this great republic.
To demand a measure of equality with the men. For many years, the efforts of the dedicated suffragettes were ridiculed and forestalled. It became apparent that women would not much longer be denied their full civil rights.
Here we go. Today's a big day.
She's an orator, an educator, a musician, a teacher, and a leader in her community. Let's welcome Zitkala Sa.
Okay. When humanity and art are fused together, peace and culture are born. The great law of peace by the Haudenosaunee people is the great law that enables all people, all men, all women and all children, all cultures to develop equally. It is the supreme teaching rooted in the law of the land and the basis of our democracy. Democracy cannot be successful unless all women are treated equal. We must stand straight and firm like an arrow pointing in the direction toward our dreams. Women of this great nation, we have envisioned a victorious outcome, the right to vote. Engrave this right in your heart and carry forth this flame of hope as we women progress, creating our ultimate dreams into a reality.
Join us online at IndianCountryToday.com for more news and updates. Have a great weekend. I'm Mark Trahan.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.